This is the covenant I will establish with them after those days, says the Lord. I will put my laws in their hearts, and I will write them upon their minds. Do you remember the old days in school? It's not that way much anymore, but some of you recall the old days of memorization. Rote memorization, everything is write it down, blocking sentences, this, and this, and this. And it was sort of this checklist, right? I do this, I do this, I do this. And that's sort of oftentimes how we lead our lives. And that is the old law. The old law is just following a list of rules, trying to do them all and see if I can get to heaven by being a good person, right? That's the old covenant. Do this and you shall live. Don't do that and you go to you know where. But there's a new covenant that Christ brought because we can never satisfy the expectations of God. God says, be holy for I am holy. In and of our own steam, by our own power, we cannot do that. So this is what God did. He said, I'm going to send my Son to fulfill the law on your behalf. And I'm going to place my Spirit in you, that the Spirit of God that's planted, that seed that's planted in your heart, will show you the ways to which you should go and direct you and make you to do it. That's the gift. That's the grace of God. Now, this is the tricky part for you and me. What kind of soil is your heart made of? How fertile are our hearts to receive that seed, the Spirit that God sends to us? Because if you notice in the parable, Jesus told us a lot of it depends on the kind of soil of your heart. If you have hard-tack rock, if you have really hard soil, and you put some seeds on the top of it, what's going to happen? Nothing. Wind will blow it away. The devil comes, snatches it away, and so forth. If you have too many weeds, you know what happens when you have too many weeds in your yard. It chokes out the good plants, right? So any seed that's planted, even if it sprouts up, it's going to die if we have these things of this world, these weeds of the world, the temptations, the trials, whatever it is in our lives that keeps us from it, it's going to choke it out. When I lived in southern Oregon, we had soil that was called, I think it was called hardtack or something like that. But you could dig down about 6 inches, and then it was entirely gravel. What do you do with soil like that? You need to break it up. You need to add other things to it to make it better. You need to put lime in there or whatever. In other words, you have to work on the soil. And that's where you and I are. How many of you, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you don't mind, but raise your hand if you've ever come closer to God because of some sort of hardship in your life. Has that ever happened to you? That's God breaking up the soil of your heart. When you have things in your life, we used to call them come to Jesus moments. And come to Jesus moments are times in your life where all of a sudden you take appraisal of where you are and you're saying, this just ain't working. God's Spirit comes, that little seed just gets planted in the right place and starts to develop and grows into a new life. We look at these opportunities, these difficulties in our life, whatever you're going through today, if it's a hard one, just remind yourself, God is working on the soil of your heart so you can receive the Word and have life. Please stand for prayer.